Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Art of the Possible Festival. It is the second last day now, and welcome to today's event, which is called Going Global, a panel discussion with leaders from the entrepreneurial space from around the world, gathering here in Adelaide. I'll start by acknowledging the land on which we meet today, the land of the Kaurna people, traditional custodians of the land, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I want to welcome Tom Haidu, Director of the C.F. Wheeler Institute, to open the discussion.
Thank you, Hussein. It's been my pleasure to work with students to create the inaugural Art of the Possible Festival. I just want to say how well the team adapted to go online within about an hour after the premiere. Mentioned on Monday that there might be some issues with COVID. One of the things we do at the C.F. Wheeler Institute is a series of talks called Creative Revolutionaries. And the reason why we call this Creative Revolutionaries is because creativity and innovation work hand in hand. I just want to share a quick slide here. Make sure this is working. So these are the job skills of the future, according to the World Economic Forum. In 2015, you can see that creativity was number 10 on the list of skills for the workforce of the future. In 2020, creativity was number 3. And now the outlook for 2022, creativity remains within the top 3 most important skills for the workforce of the future. And why is that? Because creativity fuels innovation by bringing divergent thinking skills. And in the context of strategic thinking, for example, can really provide value. Now, I would like to introduce Elena to please take over.
Thanks, Tom. Well, welcome everyone to Going Global. Tonight, we're going to be talking to entrepreneurs and innovators who hail from all 4 corners of the world, who found their way to success with their ventures in Adelaide, of all places. We're going to be touching on the unique perspectives and experiences that have helped them to thrive in this interconnected and increasingly complicated world we're living in. And we're hoping that our discussion here tonight is going to inspire some of the people watching at home to get after it as well. As Tom said, I'm Elena Davis, and I will be the MC for this evening. I'm the president of the Adelaide University Entrepreneur Club, a former finalist of the Australian E-Challenge in 2020, and I'm only 1 semester away from finishing my degree and being released from my academic prison into the real world. Oh, can't come soon enough. But of course, I'm not here. I'm not who you have all tuned in to see. So let's turn it over to some of our panelists to introduce themselves. Matthew, would you like to start us off?
Thanks, Elena. Yeah, I'm Matthew Stead. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Ping. So we are an intelligent listening business. And what we do is listen for wind turbine health. And in particular, we listen for damage on wind turbine blades. I'm a mechanical engineer and a graduate from Adelaide University a little while ago because I've got grey. And yeah, I'd love to participate in this discussion tonight. Thank you.
Chris, how about you?
Hey everybody, I'm Chris. I work for a global ed tech company called Hex. And so we work with student entrepreneurs and leaders and innovators and people who just have no idea what the hell they want to do with their lives. And we create really fun innovation programs for students. And we do this in collaboration with industry leaders from like Atlassian and Google and all the kind of name drops to be able to create something really fun and exciting and university accredited. So I grew up in California and moved to Adelaide in 2013. And I was always working within universities and yeah, I kind of realized that it wasn't for me because I think I worked too fast. I wanted to try new things. Turns out that universities are pretty bureaucratic. So wound up being asked to leave with a package and to get the hell out of University of Adelaide. And so I was kind of trying to figure out what to do with my life. And then I joined a startup and loved it ever since.
Love that. Dim, how about you?
Hey everybody, Dimitri, you can call me Dim. I'm the guy that basically comes into small businesses or established businesses and gets stuff done. Our company called Huddle was basically born and birthed from 2020 in COVID, and it basically accelerated from there. I've been in the entrepreneurial space for pretty much my entire business career. I've been a lecturer for 8 years over at Adelaide University in UniSA. I'm an alumni, I'm a graduate, the list goes on. But what we're really passionate about is making sure that the future generations of business is always sustained, so that people and technology can actually work together in order to be effective and efficient in accelerated growth. So I'm very excited to be a part of this panel today.
Fantastic. And how about you, Tim?
Thanks, Elena. My name's Tim. I'm the CEO and founder of My Venue. We're involved with the hospitality sector in point of sale. We develop mobile phone ordering solutions and we sell them around the world. We have product in North America. My background is that I'm an engineer. I'm alumni of Adelaide Uni, and I've run a few different businesses through my career and lived and worked in the US about 15 years ago and exited a business over there, which was a lot of fun. And I'm also involved with the startup sector here in Adelaide, and I've been involved as a mentor, as a board member, advisory board member, and also as an investor, including leading a few seed rounds into some of the companies at Lot 14.
Fantastic. And now our last wonderful panelist, Emily.
Thank you, Elena. I'm Amélie, like the movie, if you've seen it. I'm working for the Office of the South Australian Chief Entrepreneur. So what we try to do is to help startups grow and scale. So I meet with startups on a daily basis, and all the startups have different projects working in so many different sectors. Originally, I'm coming from France, where I studied medicine, didn't finish it, did law school, finished it, but eventually arrived in Adelaide because my husband is from Adelaide, and established a French/Australian startup for 2.5 years in the data science and engineering industry. And now I'm just trying to help startups on a bigger scale. So thank you very much for inviting me to that conversation tonight.
Of course. And that is such a noble goal of helping more entrepreneurs and more startups to really succeed in this space. I think we all know that Adelaide has a very small but mighty startup community here. So I think I'll just send this question out to all the panelists as a whole, but what does it sort of mean to you to be an entrepreneur in today's world?
I'm happy to kick things off if you like. I think there's more opportunity than ever in today's world. It's easier to communicate. There's less need to travel. People are more willing to do business over Teams. We sold our first stadium in this latest business, My Venue, in Kansas City, and none of us have been to this venue. We did the deal over Teams, and the software's available over the cloud. So the hardware was bought at their local Best Buy, I think. So there's the travel necessity of days gone by is not there. And the other thing I'd say is with hosted solutions, if you do have something in the IT space, it's relatively easy. I'm not saying easy. It's relatively easy to scale.
And if I can jump in, adding to what Tim said, my startup started 8 years ago, and 8 years ago, our idea was ahead of technology. So over that time, IoT has taken off, machine learning has taken off, microcontrollers are much smaller and more cost effective. So our idea of listening for wind turbine blade damage has really come to life because technology has caught up to our idea, and now we can bring it to the world. So also echoing what Tim's saying, we've got customers in 14 countries, and we've met 12 of those over the last year and a half through Zoom. Not Teams, Tim, but Zoom. So definitely way easier than it's ever been to start up a tech and a scalable tech company around in Adelaide as well.
If I may jump in, I totally agree with what Matthew and Tim said. But if I take another point of view, which is what it means today versus what it meant in the past, and maybe in millions of years ago, I'm just thinking that people always have thought, how hard can it be, and just try to give it a go, and it just created new things. And I think that in today's world, we are getting better at putting a word on what activities that we've always done in the world were done. So human, I guess, as a kind, we've always been entrepreneurial, but now we're just more able to frame it and find new ways, or maybe efficient ways to do things more and more. But with a world evolving, we just find new challenges. So I think for me, what it means is that we have a better idea of what it is, but just keep going on what we've always done.
I agree. Like everyone's very much accepting of a new direction of technology as being guiding their businesses moving forward. I've worked in small businesses and family businesses, and the traditional saying is, I've been doing it for 30 years. What do you know? Right? But COVID has literally shaken that up, flattened the hierarchy, and everyone who has been a cowboy or thought that their normal provided them that abundance, that growth, everyone now is way more accepting and way more open to exploring technologies, processes, methods, things that they didn't even think were the case. And that's really enlightening, especially for guys like us in the panel, is because, the world's our oyster now, right? Anything can happen. And it's not just something that happens between us as Adelaideans. One of my current vendors who I've been talking to for the last 5 years is over in Sweden, right? And I talk to my clients like now, and they're like, oh, I'm talking to a vendor over in the UK. And I'm like, that's amazing. How does that accelerate your growth? What does that mean to you? So yeah, I completely agree with what everyone's saying.
It's hard to really add to that one, but I guess really just with everyone mentioning COVID, this is the time where innovation happens. What's the saying? It's innovation happens in times of scarcity or whatever. This is actually a very awesomely good time to be an entrepreneur, to be it's usually tempting for people to do something that's safe, but actually this is an incredible time when shit's back ass backwards, whatever. So it's actually a pretty damn good time with the current environment and what it means to be today. And I guess just from, and maybe Amelie feels maybe something similar, is for people who aren't directly just a CEO and founder of a company, to be an entrepreneur, within a startup, and to actually or with an existing corporate, being an entrepreneur. For me, I was an early employee, and I worked really hard and kind of carved out a space where I found my own unfair advantage in being able to actually really kind of help navigate, COVID with the company. And I'm now a partly business owner because of it. So you can be an entrepreneur within existing companies as well. So if the students in the audience are like, what if I just don't want to just go this alone or go with someone else? There's a crap ton you can do within startups as well to make a name for yourself and carve out something really special.
100%. Now, since we have touched on COVID, I think we've all sort of seen the effects of it a bit differently in all of our different lives, and how it's affected our businesses, whether it's as an employee or as a business owner and manager. But just more broadly, how do you think people, whether they're acting as entrepreneurs or thinking about starting a business, how should they sort of approach uncertainty and these sorts of times of stress? Obviously, Chris said that, in scarcity, you get a lot of innovation, and some of that is just out of not having any other choice, but just
desperation.
desperation. So what do you think about uncertainty and how that plays into building and growing businesses?
I can start with that one. I think, well, that's my personal view, but I think a certain uncertainty is exciting. And I think as potential entrepreneur, if you're thinking about it, I think uncertainty is seen as an excitement. Life is uncertain in general, and that's what it's exciting. Sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's good, but we can just try to make as much good out of life as possible. There are always risks, and that's really inherent in anything that is new. And so in the startup world, there are risks. So it's not really about how big the risk or the uncertainty is. It's about planning it, mapping it out, and trying to mitigate these risks that may occur. And regarding COVID, I think one good way to see it is being creative. As Chris said, that's an amazing opportunity. It's unbelievable, and that's horrible what's happening. But at the same time, this is the opportunity to find new ways to do things, considering what is happening at the moment. It's the same world, but there is another format now. There is sort of a motivation or incentive to be more digital, to find new ways to do things. It's a new opportunity to create. So I think that that's two important skills. It's to be positive and to adapt, to not be scared, but to plan it a little bit.
I agree with that 100%. One of the things I think is to not be afraid, but to be obviously careful. There's industries that are doing very well at the moment, but there's also some industries that have been getting smashed. And to a certain degree, that's an opportunity too, because these industries will come back and they won't look the same, or they might not look the same. And if you want to get into a competitive industry and that whole industry is getting smashed up, and you've got 18 months of development in front of you, and you don't plan to make any revenue during that 18 months, well, guess what? None of your competitors are making revenue either. So you've got this massive opportunity to catch up and get your product out there with 18 months of runway that you wouldn't have had if the environment was different. So sure, don't bank on massive amounts of income or revenue over that 18 months or whatever time you think it may take your industry to recover, but there's an opportunity there if you're smart enough to grab it.
Yeah, totally. I mentioned earlier I was like in the education travel business during a pandemic where you couldn't travel, and yeah, like we I got to hand it to my boss. Like she said, like basically everyone in the world has like scraped their knee and they're all looking for their mom. Like we will be their mom right now. And we went out very early and said, there's this thing called like virtual programs and virtual education, and the universities were still being like, we have what we're just trying to bring people home right now. But you know what? We threw it out there early, and we had to be patient, because when the dust settled and they're going through their emails, we were the first one on that queue to be like, okay, let's actually talk about this. So if you can try to swing for the fences when everybody is kind of like saying, oh, do we hunker down? Like, sometimes part of being an entrepreneur is actually saying like, let's fail publicly. Let's try to fail publicly. And that's what we kind of did. But, our first thing we said, okay, what's going to be the craziest thing possible? Okay, let's run 24/7 live programs across 12 countries. Have we done it before? No, absolutely not. Does anyone else want to try it? Cool, let's do it. And I'm probably talking too much, but yeah, just swing for the fences.
Perhaps a slightly negative view here. Actually, being an entrepreneur is really risky, and there's so many risks. There's technology risk, there's customer risk, there's regulatory risk. There's so much risk. COVID's just another line item on a spreadsheet. It's another risk to manage, and really the challenge is with all of these risks is to make the most of them. Personally, probably COVID has been a net positive for us, but obviously there is not always that way. But I just view it as another risk line item, and is really about managing it.
I agree. To come full circle, I know entrepreneurs, that whole, you know, lifestyle side is exciting. But the mantra that I throw at anybody that I come across is pace and place. You can get really excited about an idea and you can spend 12 months doing all this R&D. If it's at your pace that you feel is right based on the research that you do, and you're in the right place at the right time in order to execute what needs to be done, it might take you 12 months, it may take you 18 months, it may take you 24. You won't know, right? So for the experiences that I've had, even with established businesses, it's understanding where you think you want to go, and just taking the journey and being confident with it. So yeah, I agree, Matt. Risk is definitely in one of those line items. And you know, Chris, I know you get excited about everything that you do all day, all the time. But if I could provide any advice, it's really sticking by your guns, and saying, okay, is this the right decision for now? And how does that affect the future? And just take it step by step by step. So.
Definitely. I know for me, I've always been pretty risk averse, but luckily I have a life partner and business partner who is the steamroller type of just goes straight ahead. And that sort of helps to even out the general business risk that we manage. So I think we can sort of touch on this a bit more broadly now of just kind of, what do you think is sort of the current environment for aspiring entrepreneurs? Obviously, we've talked about need to consider risk, but that's always there. COVID is just another line item, and just starting a business in general during a time of scarcity is really good, but it's scary no matter what. So what do you guys think? Is now a really good time to start a business?
Do we go down the path? It depends on the industry, or how do you guys feel?
I was just going to make the comment that our business has been, seriously operating for 3 years. We were raising funds last March, so that was right at the height of COVID. And I think any startup or entrepreneur needs funds. There's no question there. And I think one thing at the moment is that access to funding from across Australia, across the world, is much more accessible now. So our very first round was all Adelaide-based angels, and thanks, Tim. I'm going to have to give you a shout out there for being investor number one. Thanks, Tim. But now we have significant investors from Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Adelaide. And without the current way of communicating, we wouldn't have had that. So I think access to exploring and building on your ideas is much easier now. I won't go on about it, but obviously there's also a whole lot of additional support in the Adelaide ecosystem. So through the universities, through the Think Labs, through the Lot 14, Stone and Chalk, Tonsley, etc., there is so much more support now than there has been in the past.
Yeah, I think, and Emily could, elaborate on this, I'm sure, but South Australia is a great place, Lot 14. There's a lot of energy there. The Premier's there probably a couple of times a week with his pet baby. He's dragging business leaders and other politicians through the building. There's plenty of awareness, and it's not just at Lot 14. There's the bio precinct and the manufacturing precinct, and there's the Flinders, down at Flinders, down the southeast. There's some stuff happening in agritech. So there's a lot of different areas where you can base yourself. There's a lot of awareness, but I think if you've got an idea, you've got to get a good team together, and that's really important. I couldn't stress that enough. You need to have your bases covered. You need to be able to get your idea, develop your idea, get it to market. You need to have some financial capacity. Get together, test it with family, get out there, start pitching to angel investors. There's a few groups in Adelaide, and your family, and you know, next thing you're away. Next thing you've got a business and you're employing people.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I definitely agree. I'll take a slightly different view. I guess I'll take both views, the startup view and the government view. As a startup, I was really curious to know what is everything out there in the entrepreneurs environment that would help me grow. And now I'm part of the government. I have a much better vision of all the initiatives and strategies that are put in place to help entrepreneurs grow. And what I can see from where I am is that there are, of course, new challenges as humankind evolves. But then with new challenges in this new area of digitalization, there is also more competition, which creates also more challenges again. So every business is different, but over time, it's easy to see a lot of similarities. So everything becomes digital. And so we see a lot of, for example, people that work in a very specific industry that knows about the problems of this industry and then is going to want to digitalize it to make it more efficient, which is great. And maybe a few years ago, that would have been amazing and that would have been a real competitive advantage. But today, when everybody tries to digital everything that they have expertise on, then this competitive advantage is still one, but is it one of the best competitive advantage that you can have? Not sure. So what I'm trying to say is that the more now it's becoming more competitive, whether it's products, services, or processes, and so the more compelling the competitive advantage needs to be today. So I think we see a lot of great businesses, but essentially they end up competing with each other to get money from the state government, and so they need to be the best or in the high end of competitiveness. So that's what the current environment I see is like. It's not the easiest, and if you have a competitive advantage, it needs to be really clear and really well articulated, and becoming digital is not enough today.
I mean, that was really good. I guess the only thing I would just mention that I think just the one negative side of the current environment is I think there's still not enough money going to female founders and entrepreneurs of color. I mean, even the panel's like pretty heavily skewed, like male females. So I just think there's a lot more that can be done and should be done. And things are changing. I know that they have the Boosting Female Founders Grant that's happening right now. I know they had their own stuff up today and sent hundreds of offers to people they actually weren't offering it to. So that was a bit of a step up today, but I think that would be one thing where I think Australia and just the world in general can definitely improve on with the current environment is, yeah, so kind of leveling that playing field a bit more. A hush over the crowd.
Sorry there. I just lost my microphone for a little while, so I couldn't hear anything. But I'm sure it was great, Chris. Well, let's just move on a little bit. I know throughout that whole discussion, this really great question occurred to me of just that we're all really creative people here. And obviously, while we've all been working on our own projects and everything, I'm sure there's some things that we've come across in the past 12 to 18 months that has really got you excited. So is there any idea or opportunity that you're really excited about that you would be willing to share publicly? Because I know some of us are the type of people who, you get that idea, you tuck it away for later.
I'm happy to lead on this one. So just recently, over the last 18 weeks, I've been working closely with an Adelaide company that specializes in biometrics. So what they do is basically, Alexandra Laws has 35 years in biometrics, PhDs and ABCDEFGs, as I say to her. So she's got all this brilliant IP that allows an individual to hack their own human. Now, I love Alex. If you sat down with her, she speaks up here. And I'm a bit of a muggle if you're into Harry Potter, and I basically have simplified everything for the public sector. And we've achieved a partnership with a US company called BioStrap. So think of this as a wearable that has 200 data points, whereas your standard Garmin's, Fitbits, your Apple Watches has around about 10. Why is that any different in terms of what's already out in the market? The biggest thing for me, I've slapped this on every team member's wrist over at Huddle. And we've basically seen some amazing results in terms of, are we producing work better if we get more sleep? Stress levels are down. We're moving together. So we're about to do a fun run next week, which is really, really cool. But the biggest thing for me, being the guinea pig, because that's kind of how I roll with other people's businesses, is I've gone from being, and pardon my French, I've been a grumpy grizzly bear 18 weeks ago. Every morning I would not wake up after around about 9 o'clock. And that was because the data allowed us to see that I wasn't getting a lot of deep sleep. So it was about 52 minutes. And deep sleep is all about recovery. So how your body basically can maintain itself. Right now, I'm at 2.5 hours. Now, if Alex was on this call, she'd be saying 52 minutes, you should be dead. Now, all of a sudden, I'm like chirpy, ready to go. I can push out my team. I can look after my clients. So yeah, be ready to hack your human and, sustain a better quality of life moving forward over the next couple of months. So yeah, BioStrap, that's a really cool piece of tech that we're onto right now.
Very cool. I'm jealous. I just have an Oura ring.
I've got one as well. So yeah, we did a bit of an A/B testing. So yeah, definitely this all the way.
Very cool. Anyone else has some super cool ideas you've been excited about recently?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead.
So I'm in the renewable space. So I work with wind turbines, and up until Biden got in, and up until recently, the trajectory for renewable energy and addressing climate change was not looking good. But now there is so much positivity around renewables, batteries, solars, microgrids, grids, cars. It just keeps going. So I feel very, very positive about the positive momentum, which is not necessarily reliant on political input anymore. So that's what I'm excited about.
That's awesome. And that's one of those things where it's like, if you can remove the politics from it and it's still just everyone can get on board, that's something it's so awesome and just really opens things up to all those other perspectives.
I'll probably butcher the explanation of this startup idea, but over the last month, Hex was running some of our education programs. We've had about 200 students from 13 different countries and heard a lot of really cool ideas. And the student, shout out to Josh from University of Tasmania, I think it is. He was doing this project where he wants to take decommissioned oil rigs out in the ocean and repurpose them for harvesting seaweed for bioplastics. And I was like, yeah, makes sense. Love it. Sounds great. Because I guess it costs more money to decommission them than to repurpose them for better things for the world. So shout out to Josh from University of Tasmania.
I love that. And anything that can, still allows you to use what's already there is just chef's kiss. Love it. Saves so much time and money and energy.
So something that I'm relatively excited about is we lodged our first patent the other day, last week. We'll see how it gets up, but it was so what we're basically doing is anticipating where and when fans might pick up purchase orders. One of the complications with ordering on your phone is that everyone wants their food and beverage at quarter time or half time or before the game. And sometimes they stop or they get, they see someone or they go. spend some time heading to another concession stand, or they can't find the concession stand, and that causes all sorts of problems with food not being the right temperature. Them getting there too early or too late, or not being able to find the place. So we've developed technology. It's called Intent to Purchase, and it uses geolocation sensors on your mobile device to, then we use AI to predict where and when you'll probably pick up your order, and even getting 30 seconds advanced notice that you'll be picking up your order at a particular location is a huge benefit for venues. So we aim to get people back to their seats in half the time. That not only has the benefit of allowing people to see more of whatever event they're at, and we did Summer Sounds, we do music events as well as sporting events. It also reduces congestion in food and beverage areas, which in the current climate is very important.
Definitely important. Plus, I mean, I don't like standing in line. No one likes standing in line.
No one does. We did the one at Summer Sounds, the music festival at Bonython Park, and where they had the party pods, and you could order in your party pods, and the beverages were all brought out on little golf carts that were set up as bars, which was kind of cool because it meant you could order your drinks while you were still watching the show, and have them delivered quite often very quickly to your party pod. But one of the big things was that you don't pay for your food and beverage until you receive it. And that eliminates a lot of anxiety when people order something and they're like, well, where's my $40 worth of food and beverages, and when's it going to get here? Or heaven forbid the game or the event finishes early because of rain, or because the sporting event finished early because of something happened in the game. And then there's a massive congestion while 500 people try to work out how they're going to get a credit for product that they didn't get, or they no longer want.
And there you go, thinking 4 steps ahead of where I was with that. So fantastic, love it. Emily, any ideas?
Yeah, so I don't have a startup or a project of my own, but I guess the only thing that I'm really excited about, I say to my husband every night how much I love my job, and I think he's quite sick of it by now. But it's just really fulfilling to discover so many new products and services and processes in all sorts of industries, and what people come up with, and to, if they're not successful for the grant that we manage or the various programs that we manage, and just being able to help them just a little bit by connecting them or whatever it is, this is just very fulfilling. So yeah, I'm very happy to take part like that, and I'm fulfilled. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about what am I going to discover tomorrow. Yeah.
That's awesome. I know I feel the same way about my sort of day job, which is in audit. And I know that sounds weird, but I'm just like, every day I'm discovering something new about a client or just about how this industry works. And it's wonderful. And I feel like I'm actually making a difference. So I think we'll go a bit more broad again and ask sort of more generally, what role do you think creativity plays in this space, in being a business person, but also creating something from scratch? Because obviously it's kind of a disparate thing. You have to really be able to be really type A, but you have to also really have those creative type B skills.
I'm happy to start with that one. It's a really tough one, because then we can go into philosophical definitions and concepts. So I think creativity in general, everybody has a different definition of what creativity is. There's actually a book, I don't know if you've heard about that book, that selected the best 101 definition of creativity that have been written by experts, and some definitions are actually contradictory. So they don't give a conclusion, they leave the reader to make its own conclusion on what creativity is. To me, it's very draining. I'm very creative. I do things all the time. I try to solve things that happen in the house all the time because I'm renovative. That's really fun. But to me, that's expressing the ability of an individual to imagine or to do and implement a concept, an object, or just a solution to a problem. And I think sometimes I'm not sure whether we should talk about creativity or discovery. Well, for Mars, we'd say discovery because it pre-existed. But I don't know, for fire or for a special type of painting or whatever it might be, is it created or is it discovered? But that's another debate, I guess. But if you want to talk about it, I'm keen.
No, that's a very good point, because there's definitely some things where, like, obviously, like Tim, with everything you're doing with My Venue, you're finding just the best process for handling that situation, which some would argue that's discovery, but others would argue it's creativity.
Yeah, I tend to probably look at things a bit more through an engineering lens. I think creativity is incredibly important, but so I think, you know, obviously normally you're problem solving. So you've identified a problem. Now, how could you identify that problem? Well, maybe you have particular expertise in an area, or your background is around that area, or when you grow up you experienced something that frustrated you, and now armed with these skills, you can form a team, and the team can build trust and can bounce ideas around and come up with solutions. Quite often it's not, I mean, the guy that developed the, you know, the stumps, the bails that are on the stumps, when the cricket ball hits the stumps and the bails light up, called zing bails. That guy is an Adelaide guy, and that, to me, that's creative at the extreme end, because it's an idea, and then the idea, everything flows from that. Whereas a lot of today's challenges that startups are solving are more complex, and they're developed over time, and they're developed in trusted groups. So I always think that startups and entrepreneurial thinking comes best out of a team, albeit even if one person might initiate the first challenge, and then how that evolves from there is very important, and that creative environment is just absolutely fundamental to the success of the startup.
Definitely. I do think it's worth noting, however, on the slide that Tom showed at the very beginning of the top 10 skills that you need, it's number one from a few years ago and from 2020 were both complex problem solving, but in the looking forward, complex problem solving was down to number 6, which to me seems a bit contradictory for just how complicated the world is becoming and how important it is to be solving those problems actively before they even show up.
I've got a similar lens to Tim in that I believe entrepreneurship is a combination of creativity and action. And, you know, being a mathematical type person, I think it's at times. So I think, you know, creativity is great, but so many ideas just, you know, stop, and actually at least more than half the effort is in the action. And so, you know, combining the creativity, which is the essential component, but, you know, you have to put equal weight on the delivery. And, you know, absolutely the delivery and the action is definitely not necessarily as exciting as the creativity, but it's an essential part for pushing through and achieving. So, you know, I absolutely love creativity, and I think that's one of the great opportunities. Everything you've got a chance to be creative, but it's really that follow through, which is the most important part.
I think with like creativity, like being so high on that list, it's kind of like contradictory to like the way that we learn, like the way like we are kind of our default as a country, or in many other like countries, is kind of like rote learning and linear thinking and like a linear path to success. I go to school, I memorize this shit, then I go to university, not sure if I'm gonna love this thing or not, but like I just wish it, I hope that it can start earlier and earlier when we're kids, and kind of switch it back to, instead of competition, more to kind of collaboration and project-based learning. And that, how long can we still try to keep that sense of wonder and imagination during a traditional school? Like, I shouldn't have to pay heaps of like money for my kids to go to like a more kind of progressive, innovative like school. This should be like public school education, should be like creative and collaborative, like F the ATAR, like F NAPLAN, like being able to actually just from an early age, and keeping that sense of wonder and imagination. Imagine what so many of the next gen could be like, if we had a little bit more of that sense from a very early age and kept that going. I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, it's a very good soapbox to be on though, Chris. Very important. But I think this kind of ties back to like what Dim, you were saying, of sort of being a human guinea pig for yourself and just kind of working with other people's ideas and developing them more. It's just kind of fostering their creativity.
100%. I've got my mentors, and one of them says, you paint your own house. A painter should be painting their own house, right? But the actual analogy is a painter never paints their own house, which I find silly, because at the end of the day, if you're not experiencing yourself, you can't figure out those hidden blind spots. You can't understand where the value is, because at the end of the day, we're all people, right? And if you're wanting to invest in a business or buy a product or jump into an internship, you're gonna have to put yourselves across into the other person's lens so that you can be accountable and maintain that integrity to provide the best value for that person. Like, for example, the biggest thing that we do at Huddle is my relationship with my interns is I treat them as family. Like, the girls are currently watching me talk right now. So, hey girls, how you going? But the biggest thing is we throw them into the deep end. It's all about that exploration. It's about finding themselves and allowing them to ensure that they can achieve their goal paced at their own level. But at the same time, it's where the enjoyment is. It's where the feedback amongst themselves say, we're working with Huddle and we feel good about it, right? Instead of, I'm going to a 9-to-5 job, I'm not quite sure, my intern finishes in 2 days, and I still don't understand whether or not it aligns with me. So yeah, definitely paint your own house, get involved.
100%.
I just want to add on to that. Sorry. I think it's really important for people to realize that we are all creative to some extent. So to just join Dim and Chris in what they said, we face problems every day, like small problems, small things. Like you didn't paint it well. How can you solve that? So it's just solving the small problems of everyday life, and we all do it. I don't know, there was wind and rain the other day. Let's imagine your roof has a small part that is broken. How are you going to fix it? You're not just going to say, I'll just leave it that way. No, you're going to do something about it. If you can't afford an expensive roof, are you going to do something about it? So we're all creative to some extent, and I think we should look into that and try to think outside of the box that, as Chris said, we are put into in the educational system in general, which is a shame. So yeah, just looking what's outside.
Now I feel bad for calling that handyman the other day when my roof was actually leaking a little bit, but that's why you rent. That's why you rent, people.
No, I just bought a house and I'm renovating it myself.
Oh, très bien.
Living your values there. Paint your own house. Why not build your own house? No, definitely. Yeah, some really good points made there. I know for me, every time that I've just gone out there and just dug into something new and exciting, I've learned so much, even if I learned that I don't like it. And that's something that's really, really, really important and just helps you just develop as a person, but also sort of your skills of just interacting with the world and interacting with your ideas and businesses. But of course, I know we all come from very different backgrounds and have come to sort of very similar, although slightly contradictory conclusions on a few of these points. But what do you think are some universal skills for entrepreneurs to leverage that can actually help them succeed in their venture? Or just people in general, because obviously some of us are going into an actual full-time career and that's all we want to do, but we've tried the startup thing, we know it doesn't necessarily work for us, or we're just not ready for that yet. What do you guys think? Universal skills.
Keep learning, keep reading, keep teaching yourself. Yeah, well, everyone agrees here on the panel. You're only as good as your last book. And at the end of the day, you know, you read something that someone else has said, and then all of a sudden you get that aha moment, either over breakfast or at 3 o'clock in the morning in my case, and the world just changes for you and it transforms for your team and the client and the community. So yeah, as a universal, you know, attribute or skill, keep reading, keep learning is something that has been helping me with my success and the clients that I work with as well.
Amelie, go ahead. You had the mic off. Go first.
I would say, but mostly, well, there's a whole bunch of them, but I would say mostly, and some make sense, is just being positive and being able to adapt. When I came to Australia, in the back of my mind, I remembered my ex-boyfriend that said, you can't go to an English speaking country and work there. You don't speak English. And here I am just having a great job, or what I think is a great job that I love. And I thought, well, if I wasn't positive and if I wasn't able to adapt, I would have never done it. But just give it a shot, try. There are risks. Again, it's about how you mitigate the risk. It's about keep learning, being a talker, but a listener as well. Listen to what people that have the experience that are around you say. Some feedback might be relevant, some feedback might not be relevant, so you can filter that. But if you have a great idea and you want to pursue your dream to establish your startup, I think people should just go for it, be positive, adapt to what they listen around them, taking the feedback, mapping it out, and going for their dream. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of students, I think, listening in. So one of the things that doesn't matter are grades. Like F grades, like that is not, like entrepreneurship in some way can be a great equalizer for university students. You know, like with HEX, the way that when a student applies for our programs, you know, we don't look at grades, what you're studying, your idea. It's curiosity, passion, evidence of action, adaptability, like having a coachable mind, and like as Jim said, like just like continue, like just the willingness to learn and to be able to be like a bit humble and to be a bit empathetic about that as well. So, but yeah, like
100%.
Grades are not it. So like, you know, some of our students who are high, like, you know, high distinction students are not always the students that are launching the businesses or doing as well on our programs. A student who was just like, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out, I have no idea what I do with my life, but I'm really passionate about this really ridiculously niche thing that I love so much, and I can't stop thinking about it. And I think the only thing I guess to add would just be for skills, like bring people around you that have a difference of opinion and look different than you. That really helps as well with your entrepreneurial venture.
Definitely. I know for me, being quite introverted, but also sort of fly by the seat of my pants, having someone with me who's a bit more outgoing, but who also plans things out a little bit better, it just helps. Like that difference in personality really helps. And it helps as well to just have meshing, but not completely overlapping skill sets there in a team environment.
Synergy.
Yeah, definitely. Although I wish I were a bit more technical in my knowledge. Like that's one thing that I wish that I had done instead of going a bit more businessy with my degree, is going a bit more technical. Too late now, 1 semester left. Maybe next degree.
A couple of things, I think, you know, the positivity, can-do attitude, give it a go. They're key attributes. The other two that I'd add to that is persistence, and I think there were a few words to that from a few of the others. That persistence carries you through because there's always going to be plenty of times when you don't make progress and you feel like no one's listening, or you feel like you aren't being successful. It's late at night and you've got to soldier on with a presentation or with something or an email that you've just received from overseas that wasn't what you hoped. Persistence is very important. And the last one, I think that's super important, is to learn from every mistake. And there are lots of mistakes, but learning from mistakes is really important. When I work with people and we make mistakes, it's not something to be angry about. It's not something to get down about. It's what can we learn from that, and how can we be better and avoid it next time.
I'm not sure I got a whole lot to add because I think everyone's covered the key things. But for me, probably the thing I would like to add is that, you know, Melbourne is 700 k's away, but New York is, you know, 7,000 or whatever it is. I just made that up. But now there's no reason why you have to limit where your market is. And if you've really got a great thing, you'll get people to listen to you. And so I think probably what I would encourage people to do is, you know, that persistence, the listening is another key thing for me, but also don't lower your horizons. You can be global, you can be big, you can do really great things, and don't limit yourself to your own, you know, sphere.
Can I ask a question? Because I'm curious about, like, especially for like Tim and Matthew, who've like had to sell overseas and work in global education too. Like, have you noticed like any of the differences between like kind of cross-cultural contexts in your skills? Like, have you had to kind of like massage certain skills with dealing with different, whether it's investors or anything on different outside Australia?
I mean, so the countries I'm dealing with, sort of European, India, Vietnam, you know, South America, US. So it is very broad. I think in what we're doing is highly technical. So we're doing, you know, PCBAs, and so most of our people we're working with have sort of, you know, technical backgrounds. And to be honest, there aren't as many differences as I would have anticipated. So there's only been one customer in Colombia where there's been a translator. All of our other customers have had English, maybe not necessarily first language. So at least for us, we're talking to people that, thank goodness, because I'm useless at even English, let alone other languages. So that's probably one thing. I think I've certainly found a lot of respect from different cultures, and inquisitiveness and openness, and to be honest, I'm not sure necessarily had to deal with any significant cultural differences. It's just about being inquisitive and getting to know the person you're talking to. And yeah, I think probably my summary is it is probably a bit easier than you think, and hence that's why I don't want people to limit their horizons, because it probably is easier than you think.
So from my perspective, respect is super important. You know, we are so lucky that we speak English a lot to each other, and when you travel, sure, you know, in technical and in business, English is widely spoken, but it always helps if you're going to another country, or even if you're on Teams meeting to another country, if you know a bit about that country and you know even a couple of words, even to say hello or goodbye, it means a lot to the people you deal with, and it can really help to build relationships quickly. the other thing is to learn, certainly with Americans, and America's a big economy, a big market. So a lot of people who are in the startup sector end up dealing with Americans. It's useful to learn a bit about just the terminology, like referring to the footpath as a sidewalk, or the trunk, or the parking lot, and be able to make sure when you send an email that you're not using Aussie slang. We might think it's really cool to be doing business all over the world from Australia, but some people, they get a bit fearful and they go, really, Australia? My goodness, they've just got snakes and spiders and sharks. So I think that that respect comes into it, and learning a bit about the country and the people that you're dealing with certainly helps to go a long way when you're building those relationships.
I was going to say, speak for yourself, Tim. I use Aussie slang in all my emails to all my American friends.
Good day, mate.
Good day.
When we used to travel and send students over to Silicon Valley, we had to really amp up Australians upselling and hype, and Tim, you mentioned this earlier with me, hype, 100%. Americans, we're everything's great, this thing is awesome, you're gonna love it. Who does that sound like, right? It's the biggest thing you've ever seen. But you know what, our students who are pitching in front of investors and things were yeah, I'm just doing this thing, it's going all right. And it's no, we gotta it's one level, a couple levels up a bit. But yeah, I guess, and Amelie, maybe from your experience from France to Australia, as well.
Yeah, I have an opposite opinion, I guess. Coming from France to Australia, it wasn't my business, it was someone else's business, but I was tasked with establishing this business in Australia, and there were a lot of similarities between France and Australia. Of course, the language was different, but then, in the process of making business, it seemed a lot similar, but in reality, it was not similar at all. And so that was really confusing. So for example, you go to some countries, that there are some cultural differences, and you'll take them into account and you'll make sure that you adapt. But when the cultural differences are not obvious, it's actually really hard to identify and understand them. So for example, in France, it's really, really, really hard to get a first meeting with someone. If you have a first meeting, generally, not always, I'm not going to generalize, but it seems that it's really hard to get that first meeting. And once you get that first meeting, then it's a good sign that you'll end up making business with that entity. In Australia, you just send a message on LinkedIn for a coffee catch-up. People say yes, but then you need to convince them. So I guess the gate to making business is at a different level between France and Australia, but that's not obvious. So French people come here, they have a meeting, they're like, great, I'm gonna make business. And no. So, and I guess there is another attitude as well. French people can be sometimes, I don't know, intimidating as a strategy, or sometimes a bit arrogant and all that. And so, that wouldn't work here. And so some French people need to understand that. So there are differences that are not obvious, but need to work through that to make business properly.
I'll echo what Amelie's saying. Just coming from America, I think, Chris, you would have experienced this as well. As you said, being hyped about everything. Apparently, in my job, it kind of comes across as me being sarcastic. And I'm like, no. I genuinely enjoy everything. Please. No sarcasm.
Please, I was programmed this way.
I can't help it. I'm enthusiastic. It's who I am. But yes, this is.
But I feel like I prefer this ecosystem a bit more than the States, though. I don't know, this. I feel like there's a bit more of I don't know, collaboration, pay it forward, supportive culture, less individualistic, a little bit more, like a little less competitive in my view, like a little bit more of a focus on like mental health, well-being, work-life balance, that kind of thing. Have you noticed that?
The fact that, sometimes grocery stores aren't open because it's a holiday, that is a culture shock and a half, my friend. I can't go to the cinema on Christmas Day. My God. But that's, little subtle things. Doesn't affect business too much. All right. Well, I think we'll start to wrap up this conversation, but I did want to ask one other really interesting question. And I think this is something that we can just do as sort of soundbite. What is one piece of advice that you think students or aspiring entrepreneurs should ignore? Something that you probably hear a lot, but just never pans out.
I'll have a crack at that one first. I'll say the first valuation they hear on their idea. So many times you see startups come in and it's really early days and they're only just getting their team together. They're way off revenue, and someone's told them that you're running a $3 million or a $5 million pre-money company, and a year later they're still trying to raise their first money. So I'd say get a realistic valuation. The main thing is to get some people on board first, get some mentors, get some supporters, get people who believe in your product, and develop a team, and then go from there.
Before like coming into the entrepreneurship space, I had heard that like, oh, don't share your idea. Like we're kind of like, I think you should share your ideas. Like, I think like, if anything, the other person gains an idea and you get feedback, like, I think that like, if you are afraid that it's just gonna get stolen, then you better get out there faster. So I think actually like sharing it and getting feedback like could actually be a good thing. So have an abundance mindset maybe, instead of like holding it out, and like put things out there early. Like don't build the wedding cake, like maybe put out the cupcake first kind of thing. So yeah, maybe with that. And I guess another thing was like, like what Matthew said earlier is like, yeah, like what you do with this idea really matters. Absolutely.
I will say though, Chris, I mean, it didn't really work well for the Winklevoss twins sharing their idea with Mark Zuckerberg, now did it?
Touche.
I would totally agree with what Chris said. No, that's true. To get feedback and people would start hearing about you and your project at an early stage as well, which is necessary to create a network surrounded by people of experience and people working in entrepreneurship in the state and beyond. My advice would be there wouldn't be so much entrepreneur people that would say that, but people outside of entrepreneurship as well that are not so familiar with it. I think of my mom that's a bit sad. She said, so you failed every single time. I'm like, no, I succeeded. Why do you think I failed? And so there would be, don't be scared to fail. And if you do, analyze where it failed and try again. And that's not a problem to fail. And that's really important to be resilient in those times and just to keep learning, keep improving. That's normal to fail, although you don't want it, but don't be scared of that.
I agree. My mom kind of says the similar thing, coming from a very strong European background. She always says, just be yourself, whatever you do, whether it's entrepreneurship or working a 9-to-5 job. The preconditioned, precedence is you're either a hustler or you're working stupid hours. But at the end of the day, if you're not yourself on that journey, it doesn't actually mean anything. Whether you get that evaluation in the first one, just like Tim was saying, or whether or not you're sharing it, over coffee with someone that you think is a competitor. At the end of the day, if you're not happy with yourself and you're surrounding yourself with good people, then good things just won't happen. So if I could provide some advice, like stick by your guns, because it is a long journey. And 9 times out of 10, it's going to go like this. And, you know, the biggest thing from my experience is even the last 3 months, I've gone from being by myself inside of a company to a team of 12, but I treat them as family because all of us are our true selves, making sure that we can push for the next 5 years. So.
Love that. We truly are on the longest ride of our lives in trying to develop ourselves as people. And then the businesses and friends we make along the way are just bonus. So as we're wrapping up, just want to thank you all for joining us tonight. But I do also want to ask, where can people find you if they want to, or if you want to be found? Dim, how about you?
You can find me at poweredbyhuddle.com.au, or you can find me on LinkedIn, which is basically where I live every other day of the week. And yeah, that's basically it.
Awesome. Tim?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. I've got a pretty unique surname, so shouldn't be any problems there. And I'm based at Lot 14 3 days a week, and enjoy it there. So I'm trying to make some time for a coffee with anyone who might be interested in a chat.
Fantastic. Emily?
You can find me on LinkedIn as well. It's Emily Froger on LinkedIn. I think in South Australia there aren't too many people with that name. And otherwise, I'm working, well, not at the moment because of lockdown, but generally at Lot 14 as well on the first floor. You can also send an email on the fix.org.au website. It will be redirected to any one of our team in the business development team. And that's our job and our mission, to meet with entrepreneurs or future entrepreneurs. So please get in touch.
Awesome. Matthew?
So yeah, LinkedIn as well, Matthew Stead. And the other option is pingmonitor.co, which is our company product.
Fantastic. And Chris?
Usually you can find me at the Crown and Anchor pub. Our website is startwithhex.com. So HEX, startwithhex.com, and Chris Hoffman on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Fantastic. And I can, of course, be found at theauec.com, also entrepreneur at clubs.auu.org.au. And I'm also lurking around ThinkLab, Nexus, wherever around the East End of Adelaide. And yeah, thank you all for joining us tonight. And we'll just have a last few remarks from Hussein.
Thank you, everybody. What an amazing session. And thank you to everybody who joined us via Facebook, through all of our platforms live streamed. I think in this very time, like with the lockdown, having a festival run and having a panel run as effectively as was today shows, you know, that entrepreneurs of the future are getting ready. You know, we are sort of getting into the world where being like doing something that is unique, that is different, is acceptable, and we sort of have that skill set. So thank you to everybody for joining us today. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you to the CF Rural Institute for collaborating with us. Yes, and have a safe next few days, and we hopefully are getting out of this situation super soon. Yep. So this wraps our session today. See you guys. Take care. Bye.